Problem number 5. An ice cream factory makes 220 quarts of ice cream in 5 hours. How many quarts could be made in 12 hours? I realize I can solve this using a proportion. One way to recognize this is to just think about the fact that you have a rate, 220 quarts per 5 hours. So you could put that rate over here. And then if you can create another rate that's equivalent to it, quarts in hours, you can use a proportion to solve. Another way to think of it is to use this reasoning where you say, okay, I see this pattern where if I see 3 numbers and then I can find 2 pairs. For example, hours goes with hours, that's a pair. Quarts goes with quarts. If I can find that pattern in the problem, I can solve using a proportion. So I begin by recording my first rate in one of the fractions. So I record 220 quarts. That's supposed to be 220. That's a little messy. Sorry. And 5 hours. So 220 quarts of ice cream can be made every 5 hours. Then in the question I'm being asked, in 12 hours, how many quarts can be made? So this is the question mark. This is the part I don't know. So that's going to be my variable. To have equivalent ratios, you got to make sure it's the same. So this would have to be quarts per hours, just like this side is quarts per hours. So check and make sure you have quarts across from quarts and hours across from hours. Then I can solve using cross multiplication because this does not look like a problem where you can use scaling easily. So that's when I use cross multiplication. So I multiply 5 by x and I multiply 220 by 12. I'm going to show you this work for multiplying because in 7th grade, I'm required to make sure you can multiply, divide, add, and subtract with decimals, fractions, all sorts of numbers before you go on to 8th grade. So we need to keep practicing it so we don't forget it. 0 times 2 is 0. So we're multiplying by this 2 first. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. We need a 0 to hold the place, and then we're going to be multiplying by the 1. 0 times 1 is 0. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. And then I add those together. And that's what this is equal to. All right, so there are my 2 cross products, 5x and 2,640. The final step in solving a proportion is to divide each side by the coefficient. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so we get 1x is equal to, and then I take the 2,640 and I divide it by 5. 5 goes into 2, 0 times. 5 goes into 26, 5 times, because 5 times 5 is 25. 26 minus 25 is 1. You can't ask yourself the question until you bring a number down. Now I can ask, how many times does 5 go into 14? That'd be 2 times, because 5 times 2 is 10. Can't ask the question until I bring a number down. Now I can ask, 5 goes into 40 how many times? 8 times, because 5 times 8 is 40. I subtract, I get 0, there's nothing to bring down. So my answer is 528. And if you wrote 528, I would ask you, 528 what? So let's reread the question. How many quarts can be made in 12 hours? Well, 528 quarts of ice cream can be made in 5 hours. You could also just look back at the label on X. The label was quarts. So at the end, when I get what X equals, I put quarts on the end of it. Now we need to find the rate per day. Now this is the important part because we were given the rate in hours. Both of these are in hours. So we're going to have to convert this to days. So I'm going to think about which would be easier to switch, the 5 hours of the 12 hours to days, And the 12 hours is going to be very convenient to use. So I'm going to use that ratio to come up with my unit rate in days or per day. So 12 hours went with the 528 quarts. We found that 528 quarts can be made in 12 hours. Now look at how convenient this is. I'm going to use scaling to create an equivalent fraction. So I'm going to multiply this by 2, and I get 24 hours. Hope you're seeing that that's a special number. And then to keep the fraction equivalent, you have to also multiply the numerator by 2. So let me go ahead and multiply 528 times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Put the 6 there, carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. And 5 times 2 is 10. So we get 1,056 quarts. And 24 hours, guess what, is equal to 1 day. So I can just cross out 24 hours and change it to 1 day. And if 1 is in the denominator, we've changed it to a unit rate. So our answer is that this ice cream factory can make 1,056 quarts Q per P day D. QPD, quarts per day.